Welcome, everybody. Scott Golden here, April the 10th, 2020. Today we're going to talk about my allergies here for a second. My apologies there. A bit of a cough. My allergies are acting up as they do every April and every October without fail for the last 20-plus years. For about 2 weeks, I end up with a trickle down the back of my throat and sometimes lose my voice. And then in about 2 weeks, week and a half to 2 weeks, it goes away. So if I sound a little like a frog, if I sound a little Kermit to you in the next couple of weeks, my apologies in advance. Today we're going to talk about it's a pandemic. Now what? What do we do now that we're in the middle of this thing? And it's interesting for those that know, obviously, I'm a life and business coach. I work with people through their relationships. I work with people that, in a lot of ways, traditional mental health has somehow failed them. And I work with 12,000 people in 40 countries. And I will say, I get out of the nursing home at the right time. For those that wonder what I'm talking about there, please go and look for the video with the husky on it. That will explain that whole situation in great detail, better than telling the story again. Anyway, I got out on the 24th of January from a nursing facility. I started working that day. I had been working a plan the entire 15 months I was in there to return to work the day I got out. And I didn't know at the time that this pandemic was coming. I had no idea. I don't think anybody did. Well, that's not true. I do believe some people knew, but not anybody who was going to share the information with you or me. In any event, I had said to myself, this is going to be an interesting ride. I had $200 to my name when I got out. $200. Imagine if all you had left to your name was $200 and you had a disability that confines you to a wheelchair and you had to relearn to do everything. That's the boat I found myself in on January 24th, 2020. Yet I said, okay, I'm here to serve. It's time to get busy. Well, probably within about 2 weeks, by about Valentine's Day, maybe a little bit longer, I started to hear about this coronavirus stuff. And I'm thinking, oh, I remember SARS. Is it like that? I remember, what was the other one? H1N1. Is it like that? I didn't really think anything of it because, honestly, these health-related pandemics to me are, in my belief system, a force of nature. They're going to happen every so many years. Some say 10, some say 20, some say 5. But every so many years we're going to have one of these mutations. Depending on your belief system, some say they happen naturally in nature. Others say they're man-made, man-manufactured. I'm somewhere in the middle on that. I think it's a little bit of both. Irrespective of the politics of it, because who cares? That's not what you're here for. I paid closer and closer attention. And then it started to hit my clients, like this whole, pandemic thing. And I work with people all over the world, so I'd start to hear, like, what do you think's going to happen with this? And I'm like, I don't know. Ruh-roh, Shaggy. I don't know. And then I started to hear things like, am I going to lose my job? Do you think I'll lose my job? Like, hope not, but we'll work through it if you do. And then I started to hear the news like everybody else. Now, small aside, skip ahead about 60 seconds. If you don't want to hear a personal opinion here, I try and keep it out of the video, but I'm going to be honest and say I'm experiencing the emotion of annoyance with this whole situation. If the mainstream media in every country really cared about you or me, they would be telling the whole story, not just the pandemic, everybody be scared and stay inside your house story. They'd be telling the story that people are recovering from this thing, and they'd be telling it equal to the amount of time they're telling the people are dying story. If they were really interested and fully vested in you and I, fully vested in the recovery of our world and our individualized nations, that's what would be happening. The fact that it's not means there's another agenda here. Everyone can figure out what that is for themselves because I don't want to impose my views on other people. Anyway, then I started to get this really interesting thing. There was this dichotomy. And as I work, and those of you who know me know I work 16 to 18-hour days. I'm available to my clients. If I'm not available, I'm either not in where I stay, not in the place I'm staying, or I'm asleep. So there's very little time in a day when I'm not available for client sessions. But I started to hear two different sides of the story. I started to hear the it's no big deal, who cares? And then I started to hear the other side, which is this is going to be the end of the world. This is going to be horrible. It's going to take us years to recover. And then I started to see, and that stayed for about a week. And what I've had for about the last week and a half makes me angry and sad and frustrated for humanity all in one. There are people in this world right now who are struggling because they have mental health issues, and the media coverage is causing them to be triggered. The media coverage is causing them to fall apart. The media coverage is causing them to forget their medication, not take their medication, or worse yet, there are groups of people, and I've talked to people in 5 different states this has happened to. I'd love to hear your story in the comments below if it's happened to you as well, where they've been denied their medications because pharmacies are being instructed either from state or federal government agencies to leave more room for potential pandemic-related medications and not refill certain prescriptions. It's happening in multiple places. Look it up if you don't believe me. Anyway, so there's people that are struggling with all sorts of different things. And they're asking some really valuable questions. What do I do now that I'm stuck in this situation? Now, in full disclosure, I'm human, which means I have negative thoughts from time to time. I'm not one of these coaches and teachers who sits there and says, don't ever have a negative thought. Go hug a fluffy duck every time you feel any negative emotion. I say express it, expunge it, get through it, get past it, and walk over it. So there's part of me, because I've been homebound for extended periods of my life due to my disability, sometimes due to abuse, other times due to not having transportation, other times because I didn't want to use the public transportation available to the disabled, because in multiple states I've been left on the side of the road. And I don't know about you, but that's not really a fun thing to do in a wheelchair, folks. You know, if it's the middle of winter and you're left in the snow, no thank you. Anyway, so there's been periods of time when I've been weeks or months unable to leave my living surroundings. And for me, that's normal. And for me, it's something I just cope with. I don't like it. I prefer not to go through it, but I cope with it. Now, all of a sudden, I hear people who haven't done this before in their lives and go, and they're like a weekend, and they're like, I've got to get out. Let me out. And I'm like, what have you done this for 6 months? And then I thought about it, and I went, wait a minute. What about all the prisoners all around the world? Some who are rightfully imprisoned, some who are wrongfully imprisoned, some who made some bad choices while under the control of illicit substances or alcohol, some who have been framed. But there's literally millions of people who go through this type of confinement every single day, some of them for years at a time. And I thought for a minute, and I thought a little bit more, and I thought, what about people in third world countries who are imprisoned in their villages because they don't have transportation? Those people go through it all the time. What do they do? What do the prisoners do? What do the disabled do? What do the elderly do? What do the groups that have to deal with this type of situation on a regular basis and are the forgotten in our society? And hopefully this pandemic changes that. My heartfelt belief and hope, and I won't say prayer because people will misunderstand. They'll think I'm meaning religious, but I mean prayer in the lifting up energy to whatever you believe the Creator is. My higher prayer is that somebody wakes everybody up, boops us on the nose and boops us on the top of the head and says, take better care of those who are struggling in their day-to-day life. That means the disabled, that means the elderly, that means those who can't drive, that means those who maybe are on house arrest or they've had hardships. Because these people live this way, some of them, for years at a time or months at a time. But let's address what you can do in this time. Study what works. You know, one of the most important things, or the most common thing I'm hearing is, what if I lose my job? And I come back at the clients with, yes, that would be terrible. Yes, it would cause you financial hardship. And then what? In other words, here's the truth, folks. Unemployment rates in the United States and in Canada are higher than they've ever been in the history of the program. Why? Because businesses are having to make changes that most of them don't want to make, but they don't have a choice. Their other choice is get rid of everybody, so they choose the lesser of two evils and get rid of some. So you can study what people who are successful are doing. And I'll say one thing they're doing, they're diversifying their skill set. They're making relationships matter more. In other words, your neighbor needs something. Maybe your neighbor needs their house payment when this is over. Guess what? Ching, ching, there's money. Maybe your neighbor is going to need someone to watch their kids because they've got to pick up a second job to catch up on their mortgage or their credit cards or whatever have. Ching, ching, there's money. Maybe there's going to be people, actually we know there's going to be people, who get evicted from their apartments unfairly because each state has different eviction laws about people being behind on their rent because of the pandemic. And there's this misnomer that's out there, because I've seen it and heard it, that no one's going to get evicted because of this. No, not true. No one's going to get evicted immediately because of this, but evictions can still happen. So there's going to be people that need things moved from their houses. There's going to be people that need their resumes reworded and reworked. There's going to be people who need confidence boosters and coaches. There's going to be people who need practical skills. I mean, there are people right now. I talked with one lady last night and tried to get her to go to a inpatient care facility. I failed, and finally she said she would go talk to her doctor today. Well, that was yesterday. But she'd go talk to her doctor, and I waited on the phone, and she patched the call through, made sure she was in good hands. But anyway, the idea is there are things we can do that change things. Now, here's another one. Build relationships. If there's one thing we're supposed to learn from this virus, it's that we've become so anti-socially social. I'm going to say that again, anti-socially social, meaning we rely on social media but don't build real, lasting, face-to-face personal relationships. Now is the time to make plans to do that. Now is the time to say, when everybody's better, we're going to spend more time in each other's physical presence. Because imagine if you had some friends right now while you're going through this, and you didn't have to sequester in your apartment. You could all sequester in larger spaces together, knowing that, well, no one here is sick, and we're not, we can go in, like shifts. So like one person goes to the grocery store one week, another person goes the next week, and it limits the number of people that get sick, because if you're all in the same household, that's going to reduce the number of potential exposures. But because you and I didn't spend the time and make the effort to build lasting face-to-face relationships, most of us are dealing with loneliness. Most of us are dealing with isolation. Most of us are dealing with feelings of like, let me see people. Another thing, if you're dealing with your partner and you haven't had enough time with them lately, or you've had too much time with them lately, understand that this too shall pass. Find the good in it. Maybe it's an invitation for the two of you to play cards again for the first time in 3 years because you don't have anything better to do. Maybe it's the time you binge Netflix. Maybe you read the books she's been trying to get you to read about love languages for the last 6 months. Maybe you work out together and try to find ways in your house to run in place or lift free weights or do yoga or something, and you get your bodies well. Maybe you concentrate on cooking together and what a fun experience that could be, and you cook healthy foods and you eat and you nourish your bodies both spiritually and physically. There's a million things you can do with your partner, and slamming their foot in the door doesn't have to be one. Here's another thing. Think about where you want to be in 3 to 5 years from now. This virus is an opportunity for you to learn the action of planning ahead. We wouldn't have the run on toilet paper that we've had, at least here in the States, and I'm assuming internationally, if people had gone, hey, if there's ever an emergency, maybe I should get an extra package. No, now instead we've got price gouging of people going to get 86 packages. In other words, learn to plan ahead. Another great thing, look at what you really need versus what you're spending. Now is a really awesome time to kick your budget's butt. Because you can look and say, wait a minute, when things were better, when I didn't have anything to really worry about in life, when life wasn't so complicated, I was overspending by $300 a month. Well, hot dog, that's almost $4,000 a year. What could you do with $4,000? Could you go back to school? Could you put a down payment on a house or a car? Could you save for your kids' education fund, college fund? Could you take a nice vacation? That's just an estimate, but I'm guaranteeing you there are people that are within the sound of my voice who are losing hundreds or thousands of dollars a year due to bad spending habits. Now is the time to clean those up. When you're through this also, here's another one. Here's another great one. Where are you volunteering? What are you giving of yourself? Because guess what? The universe doesn't need your money. Yes, it helps. But they need your body, they need your hands, they need your feet, they need you to show up to be of service to others. So how do you plan to serve once the restrictions are taken off? What can you do, the act of doing, is going to make this world a better place? You know, it's really sad. I saw a photo of people burying bodies in New York City. They're using parks for graves. It's horrible. Thousands of people have died. It's tragic. And all I kept thinking was, where are the emotional mental health workers for the families of those whom are affected by this? They're dealing with their own practices. They're dealing with their own stuff. They're dealing with everything that everyone else doesn't want to. Here's my point. There's not going to be enough human care workers, social service workers, people in the human interest and emotional and mental recovery fields to deal with the demand. Guess what? That means you and I have to show up and actually pretend to care. And I say that with sarcasm because it's not that hard, folks. I know it's scary, and I know you might want to wrap yourself in a trash bag. But there's going to come a point when you're going to need to give someone a hug or shake their hand or pat them on the shoulder or look them in the eye and say, I don't understand. Help me understand. I want to understand you because I want to love you well. That's going to fall on churches, and it's going to fall on civic organizations. It's going to fall on you and me because each of these organizations, at the end of the day, there's only so many people. There's only so many bodies. There's only so much funds. There's only so much. Here's another thing, too. Could you pick up an extra job to make sure those that literally can't provide for themselves are taken care of just a little? Locally, you'll probably see in the next week or so me starting a GoFundMe or Indiegogo or some sort of campaign for a local nursing home here. And yes, you'll see that this name that I use is a stage name. Good job. That's because I still have a stalker. If you're listening, I know who you are. Congratulations. I'll give you a box of fluffy ducks and I'll go sit in the corner. In any event, maybe if you donated to somewhere local once we're given the ability to go back, it doesn't have to be something big. It could be a package of Depends for someone in a nursing home. It could be some dog food for a local dog rescue. It could be a new teddy bear for a kid who's been scared to death because they can't go to school and mommy can't go to work, and what the heck is this? There's a million things we can do. But I'm going to tell you something you're not going to want to hear, folks. This recovery just begins when they let you go back to work. It will take years for us to be okay. And I'm not talking just financially. I'm talking emotionally. I'm talking mentally. I'm talking spiritually. And while all that's happening, other challenges will come. Who are you in the face of that challenge? That's what you should be asking yourself right now. Not when will it be over, not will I be okay. Who am I in the face of adversity? You know, it's funny. I'm going to be having a T-shirt made for those that want to buy merchandise, for those that want to support what we're doing. And a little portion of everything that we sell through the Progress Tribe Initiative and Golden Opportunities Coaching is going to go to one charity or another. I might even have a Twitter vote on where things go at some point. I don't know, but I'm working with a designer right now to get a phoenix, the bird, rising from the middle of a ring, like a boxing or wrestling ring, because that's the other half of what I do. I run a professional wrestling channel here on YouTube as well, but it's also metaphorical. Man, we've all been in the fight of our life, haven't we? But we're going to rise just like that phoenix. And when we rise to soar, what difference are we going to make in the world? It's not what's happening to you, it's how you're responding to it that matters. Every day, all day, show up, be present. I invite you, because we need you. Everyone needs each other now more than ever. But the sad truth is, just like 9/11, going back even further, just like the Oklahoma City bombing, going back even further, just like when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and probably for those that are old enough, they could go back to the 1800s and 1700s of stories they hear in the 1600s, and you get the point. Probably since the dawn of time, sooner or later, pandemics like this happen, and people go back to their version of normal. Let's not make it that way this time. Let's evolve. Let's grow. Let's become better. Because our generation, this generation, and the next generation, and the generations to come, that's what they need from us. And you can be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. You are worthy to be a difference maker. And we need you on the front lines now. Scott Golden, Golden Opportunities Coaching. I remind you, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Comment below. What difference do you want to make when all this is over? You are loved. You were made to be loved. You can give and receive love. Until next time, everybody.